On my 34th birthday, she laughed and said, "I settled for him." So I raised my glass, exposed her messages to her parents, and walked out forever. On the night of my 34th birthday, I had imagined nothing more than a gentle celebration surrounded by people who mattered to me. I had booked a small private room at a restaurant in Chicago, hoping for an evening that felt like a pause from the endless rush of everyday life. The room was warm, with soft candles flickering against white linen, and the air carried the scent of roasted garlic and fresh bread. My mother sat at one end, my best friend at the other, and beside me was Emily, my girlfriend of 3 years. She smiled at me through the candlelight, squeezed my hand beneath the table, and for a while, it felt ordinary, even comforting. The conversation around the table flowed smoothly at first, old jokes resurfaced, stories from college, little bits of family humor that made everyone chuckle. The cake arrived decorated with small flickering candles, and a few bottles of champagne were uncorked with a pop. For a while, I allowed myself to believe the night would be exactly what I had hoped for. Simple, light, and filled with warmth. But then came the moment that changed everything. Someone asked Emily a harmless question, one that should have been sweet and easy to answer. They asked what made her fall for me. Emily turned her face toward me, then toward the table, and with a laugh that cut sharper than any knife, she said, "Honestly, I settled for him." The laughter that followed was polite but thin, an uncomfortable shuffle of forks against plates. My mother's expression hardened, my best friend put his fork down, and I felt something inside me twist tight. For a moment, I tried to convince myself it was just an awkward joke, a misstep in humor. I forced a laugh, though it felt hollow in my chest. But the truth was, her words pierced through 3 years of efforts, late-night drives to calm her stress, weekends spent planning little surprises, nights I stayed awake while she studied, all brushed aside in a single sentence framed as a joke. I kept my face steady. I lifted my glass, letting the room quiet itself before I spoke. With a calmness that belied the fire building inside me, I said, "Funny thing, your ex texted me earlier today. He said, 'Thanks for taking her off my hands.'" The room stilled completely. The conversation that once filled the space fell silent. Emily's smile faded instantly, as though someone had snatched the mask away. She leaned forward, her voice low, sharp, and accusing. "Why would you say that?" I met her gaze without pretending. "Why would you say that?" I asked back. It was a mirror, showing her exactly what her words had meant. The atmosphere shifted. The easy hum that had carried the evening was gone, replaced by a brittle silence. My mother's concerned glance, the uneasy looks between friends, they all understood what hung in the air. Emily tried to recover, tossing out jokes, but each fell flat, the laughter forced and thin. When the guests left, a few hugged me with a quiet understanding, as though they had witnessed something too raw to ignore. My mother asked softly if I was all right, her face etched with concern. And in the parking lot, Emily confronted me, her voice tight with anger. "You embarrassed me," she said. "You embarrassed me," I replied. The words were simple, undeniable. Her arms crossed, her tone dismissive. "It was just a joke. You're overreacting." But I saw through it. I remembered the polite yet hollow laughter. I remembered the silence. And deep down, I knew she had revealed something real that night, something she couldn't hide behind the excuse of humor. That night, lying awake beside her as she slept soundly, I felt not anger but clarity. The line had been crossed. I decided quietly that I wouldn't explode, wouldn't rush to end it without thought. Instead, I would watch. I would listen. I would gather facts before choosing my next move. Days passed, and though Emily tried to act as if nothing had happened, sending memes, suggesting takeout, leaning in to kiss my cheek, the words from that dinner hung over me like a shadow. Friends texted me, shocked by her comment. Even my mother, who had always treated Emily like family, asked me softly if I was truly sure about her. It didn't take long before I noticed the pattern. Subtle jabs about my ambition, comparisons to her ex woven into conversation, remarks that once seemed harmless now felt like stones being stacked against me. And then, one evening, The truth I had feared unfolded in the harsh glow of a phone screen. Emily was in the shower when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. The name that lit up the screen was one I hadn't seen in a long time, her ex. I should have looked away, but my chest tightened with a weight I couldn't ignore. I opened it, and what I found stripped away any doubt. Long conversations, late-night messages, inside jokes about me, and even a cruel line from him. "You really downgraded, didn't you?" She had laughed. She had played along. She had wondered aloud if she made the right choice. When she stepped out of the shower, I sat on the edge of the bed holding her phone. Her face went pale. "Care to explain?" I asked calmly, though inside I was burning. Her excuses were quick. "It's nothing. He doesn't mean anything to me. You're overreacting." But I had seen enough. I kissed her forehead that night and told her everything was fine. Not because I believed her, but because I had already decided. She wouldn't get the satisfaction of thinking she had fooled me. I was already planning my exit, quietly, carefully, with patience. From that night on, I played my role with precision. To Emily, I was the same boyfriend I had always been, bringing her coffee in the morning, holding her hand in public, laughing at her jokes. But behind the curtain, I was preparing. I opened a private account, shifted my savings, and quietly arranged with my landlord not to renew our lease. Each move was deliberate, each step taken with the calm resolve of a man who knew he was done. The breaking point came at her parents' house. We were at dinner when her father, a gentle man who had always treated me kindly, asked about my plans for the future. Before I could speak, Emily laughed lightly and said, "Don't expect too much. He's comfortable just coasting." Her parents chuckled politely, but I caught the confusion in her father's eyes, the slight tightening of his jaw. And in that moment, I decided the performance was over. I set my fork down and looked at her with a smile that carried none of its usual warmth. "Actually, that's not true," I said. "I just got promoted last week. But don't worry, Emily won't be around long enough to see where I end up." The room froze. Her fork slipped from her fingers with a dull clink against her plate. Her mother's hand covered her mouth, and her father's face darkened. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and placed it on the table. With a few swipes, the screen filled with her messages to her ex, message after message that told the story she had tried to hide. Emily's face drained of color. She reached for me, her voice cracking. "It's not what it looks like. Please, don't do this." But I stood. I adjusted my jacket and looked at her one last time. "You said you settled for me. But the truth is, I settled for far less than I deserved. That ends tonight." And with that, I walked out, leaving her to face the silence of her parents and the evidence she could no longer deny. In the days that followed, Emily called, texted, and even showed up at my door. Her words swung from anger to desperation. "You ruined my reputation. Please, I didn't mean it. You'll regret this." But I didn't answer. Not once. My friends reached out, some saying they would have exploded in my place. But I knew my calm was my power. Emily couldn't twist my silence into a story where she was the victim. Life moved forward. A promotion became official, and with it came the chance to relocate. I packed my things, left Chicago behind, and began again in Seattle. For the first time in years, I felt light, as though I could breathe without carrying the weight of someone else's disrespect. Months later, an email arrived. Emily poured pages of apologies into it, confessions of regret, pleas for forgiveness, and admissions that she had taken me for granted. She said she missed my steadiness, my laugh, the way I made her feel safe. At the end, she wrote, "I know I don't deserve a second chance, but please answer me once." I read it slowly, twice. Then I closed the laptop without replying. Because it wasn't about revenge. It was about peace. I had given her 3 years, my patience, my loyalty. I wouldn't give her another second. The last I heard of Emily was through a mutual friend. She had moved back in with her parents, struggling, alone. But by then, it didn't matter. My life had already shifted into something new. New city, new friends, new possibilities. Looking back, I realized that the night of my birthday, when she laughed and said she settled for me, wasn't just humiliation. It was a gift. It pulled away the mask and forced me to see the truth I had been avoiding. And walking away wasn't just the best decision I ever made. It was the first decision that truly belonged to me. So let me leave you with this. When someone shows you they think they settled for you, believe them. Don't wait for more evidence. Don't convince yourself it was a joke. Because respect is the foundation of love, and without it, there's nothing worth holding on to. Thank you for staying until the end. If you found yourself pulled into this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.